Hi guys, Ray here from City Fan TV, and I'm joined by football finance expert Colin Savage. How you doing, Colin?
I'm good, although, you talk about me as a football finance expert, but really, there's all these Liverpool and United fans out there who know far much more than I do, or UEFA do, or the Court for Arbitration of Sport, or our auditors. So I think I'm not worthy of that.
Well, if you go onto social media, something like Twitter, there's millions of them who know so much more than actual qualified accountants who might have.
How they didn't get called by Court for Arbitration of Sport is simply a mystery to me. I mean, they know everything, don't they?
Absolutely. Guys, if you haven't heard already, I mean, it came out on Monday that Manchester City's financial statements and the reports came out, the accounts. And we're going to look at some of the headlines, which you probably have seen and read about already, and then look a little bit behind some of those numbers and look at FFP changing and how that will affect City going forward. So I'm going to start off, Colin, just by asking you to go through some of the record numbers and achievements from City in the last set of accounts.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously, people may have heard it's the second highest revenue ever reported by an English club. Second only, I think, United was 620-something million a few seasons ago. And since then, for I think 2 seasons running now, we've surpassed them. I think it's the highest commercial income. We'll talk about that later. Is it the highest profit we've ever recorded?
Yeah.
And there's other things going through that, which I'll probably talk about a little bit more as we go through. But, a really pleasing set of figures. And, of course, the headline figure is a profit of £41.7 million, the highest profit we've ever recorded. I think it's one of the highest profits ever recorded by a Premier League team.
Well, obviously, profits go up and down depending on things like sales of players and profits and losses on sales of players. Something I think one club had near 90 or 100 million, and then that can swap so easily the next year to a much lower amount. So I think you've got to look over a longer period of time to get a better idea.
Yeah, and it's actually been difficult 2022 because the previous 2 years, 2021 and 2020, were COVID impacted. So City saying the accounts, you really cannot compare it to 2021. One reason was we received revenues that normally would have gone into 2021 because, of course, the season restarted after the lockdown, after the year end. So a lot of money we would have got for the later stage of the Champions League and the Premier League for 2020 didn't come in for 21. It didn't come in until 21. So that and of course that impacted 2 years. So really this was a normal year. We had full crowds all year. All revenue came in at the point it was expected. So really the last year we can compare this to is 2019, 3 years ago.
That was pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. Because that was a similar scenario. We got all the money in during that financial year that we expected to get as all the competitions were played during that year with full crowds.
Obviously, like everybody else, I think, during COVID, that season, everybody made huge losses because, like you say, some of the income was deferred to the following set of accounts. And obviously, there were no fans as well. So every club took a hit then.
Yeah, well, I mean, we took a hit, £126 million, which was only dwarfed by our losses back in 2011, which is nearly £200 million. But of course, that was just pre-financial fair play.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about some of the record, obviously record profits. First £1 billion squad. That's a few tongues wagging.
Just to explain, sorry to jump in. That's not on the market value of the squad. That is the cost.
Yes.
Original cost of the squad.
Yeah. And then obviously the first £300 million sponsorship. We will talk about that. Profits on sales of players, doing us really well. Can you just remind us, those profits on sales of players, that refers to the previous season. That refers to people like Ferran Torres and not Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko and Raheem Sterling.
That's right. And just to explain, when we talk about profit on sale, it's not the amount we sell minus the amount we bought. We've had this conversation a number of times. It the amount we sold for less the player's value on the books.
Yeah.
Takes into account any accumulated amortization. So I've given the example before. If you buy a player on a 5-year contract for £50 million, for example, we'll amortize that at £10 million a year. So at the end of the first year, that player's value in the books will go down to 40 million, 30 million, then 20 million after 3 years. If we sell him for 30 million after 3 years, we make a £10 million profit because his value on the books, as I said, is 20 million. So people often say, oh, we didn't get back what we paid for. We only got back what we paid for him, but that's not the way it works. So yeah. And the other thing is, of course, our year end is June the 30th. The transfer window doesn't open until July the 1st. So any players that we bought or sold this summer, or we won't appear until next year's accounts. And that could be a really big figure, actually. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and actually, the if I remember correctly, in one of the notes of the accounts, they do talk about that, about the post year end. Is that right? When they talk about the net income, you know, being was it? I can't remember now. Was it 35
million? I think they said. Perhaps we'll touch on that right at the end, as it's right at the end of the account. So
so I mean that's it gives you the impression that the next set of accounts could be fantastic as well.
Well, yes. Let's talk about that at the end. But yes, let's get this one out of the way first.
Yeah. So what else? What can you tell us behind some of these big numbers, and what are the big impacts?
Let's step through the main numbers. So obviously income comes from 4 separate streams mainly. There's the money we get for tickets. There's the money we get from the Premier League. There's the money we get from UEFA for appearing in the Champions League. And then there's commercial income. Now, commercial income is not just sponsorship, it's merchandise, it's concerts. So again, being able to stage concerts at the Etihad all adds to our commercial income. So just to run through the figures, match day income is around £54.5 million, which is pretty standard, around 55 million. It's not as big as Liverpool's figure, which is I think about 80 million off the top of my head. They haven't produced their 2022 accounts yet. There's a few reasons for that. One is that because we just farm out the catering. So as far as I understand it, the catering company, Fabulous Fanfare, F3 as they're known, pay us a fee. It may be a percentage related fee, I'm not sure, but they just pay us a flat fee or a fee of some sort, an agreed fee. Liverpool, they take all the income. So if you say, I'm not sure exactly how the accounting works, but if you were to take, say, £500 for hospitality for a meal, Liverpool would take that £500. We might only take, say, if F3 gives us 10% of that, we might only take 50 quid. But of course, the other side of the argument is you're paying the cost as well. So we're outsourcing it to a third company, and we're taking part of that money.
So what you're saying is if Liverpool might take a bucket at £500 because that's what the hospitality was, the cost might have been 300.
Yeah.
So they already made a £200 profit on it. And actually, when Spurs opened their new stadium, I read they were taking £850,000 from restaurants and bars per home game. A huge amount. But that didn't include, it sounds huge. And you think, wow, they must be making a ton of money. But that doesn't include the expenses related to that.
Staff and pay for the food and the beverages. But I'm sure they make a good profit. So it may be, at the end of the day, there's no difference. We may get a £10 million fee or £5 million fee from F3 or whatever, and Liverpool's profit may only be 5 million, maybe the same, maybe a bit more, I don't know. But it's reflected in the headline figures. So another reason Liverpool, because obviously Anfield's very similar size to ours, and it's a northern stadium. I think one of the other reasons Liverpool's income is higher than ours from tickets is we have a much wider range of prices. So we've got the £299 tickets. We've got the 329, the value gold ones. We've got the 325 ones at the top of the South Stand 30. We've got this silver season ticket, which doesn't include the top 6 games. So we've got a much wider range of prices with a lot. Liverpool have a much narrower range of pricing. They don't have anything like the 325, 299 tickets or the the silver season ticket, new season silver season ticket. And the other factor is they only charge one price for a game. So, for example, we have a category ABC pricing system. So we might charge £65 for a United against United or Spurs. We might charge £55 for a middling team like Newcastle, and we might charge £45 for a Nottingham Forest or someone like that, a category C team. Liverpool and United don't do that. It's one price per seat. So there's swings and roundabouts, of course.
Yeah, and obviously Liverpool have
fewer season card holders. So probably there's about a 20% premium by selling a ticket on a match by match basis. So, for example, so if my seat costs £50 on average, you think about 19 games, 950 quid.
Yeah.
You're selling that ticket on a match by match basis for about 20% more. So, 200, about £200 more, maybe something like that. So again, the more tickets you sell on a match by match basis, the more income. United, of course, got a bigger stadium. Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea are all
premium. Yeah,
obviously.
Sorry, on that point, it's one of the reasons we have the exchange where City have already got your money. This is for selling your season card seat for a particular game. City have already got your money, but they want you to give it back to them if you're not going to the game, partly because for the optics, it looks better to have more fans in the ground, and partly because if you've got a £299 season card, you're paying about
you can sell that
18 quid a game. And if they can sell that for 40 or 50 quid, if there's for argument's sake, 500 of them, they're going to make an extra, 15, 20,000 quid. So it all adds up over.
Yeah. And obviously, I've been through City Matters. I was involved in a lot of discussions about ticket exchange and moving tickets on. And, as you say, it's about giving people the chance to watch a game. I was at the game last night. There were very few people around me where I normally sit, which is normally season card holders, who were regulars.
Yeah.
Maybe half a dozen in the kind of, maybe a few more, 10 in the 3 or 4 rows around me. So, it gives, by putting a ticket on the exchange, it allows more people, it allows us to grow our match-going fan base. So
I don't think that what you just said there is important, and I think it's worth mentioning now. We've got 4 home games on the bounce. We had 2 league games, the Champions League game and the Carabao Cup game, all sellouts. So the fan base is there. It is growing.
I agree.
So we are getting closer to, selling out every game at home.
And I think it's a good case for the North Stand extension.
Yeah, I think we'll do a video about the extension of the stadium. So what else can you tell us about the finances?
Well, anyway, so that's the match day. We talked about match day. Obviously, another source we get money from is UEFA for the Champions League, and we received 90.5 million for that. It's not the highest we've received. I say it's not the highest. 2021 was the highest, 115 million. But of course, that was partly due to deferred income from the previous season. So in a normal season, that 90 million is, and of course we were in the final as well. We would have probably beaten that last year anyway, but it's certainly, ignoring 2021, again, it's the highest we've ever received from UEFA. And people forget that's a huge factor. If you're playing regularly in the latter stage of the Champions League, we've been to a final, we've been to semi-finals. The way UEFA allocate the money, that really adds up. The further you get, the more you get, and the better you finish up our league table. So if we're qualifying as champions, again, because of the way UEFA allocation system works, there's more money in that. And the better we do, the more we go up their coefficient tables, and there's more money in that. So, typically we should be looking for around this sort of, 90, 95 million every year, barring some disaster. So, and that's a huge revenue source that we weren't getting. If I look back to 2011, our European revenue was 5 million.
Yeah.
The first season we played in the Champions League, 23 million. Success has brought us that money.
And I think I've got to mention here as well, I think it's a consistent success. We're consistently getting this, which allows us to budget much better than some other clubs who are in and out.
Yes, like Spurs, a good example. Arsenal, yeah. If United and Liverpool don't get in, that impacts them. So this is a really good, reliable source of income. The next one, obviously, domestic media income. That's typically just over the 150 million mark, 158.6 million in 2022, and that again reflects our continued success because there are different ways in which the Premier League split this pot up. Some of it's shared equally, some of it's merit-based. Some of the foreign income is more heavily weighted to the more successful teams. So typically it's about 150 million, some 155 to 160 million. The top we ever received was in 2019, 167 million. I'm not quite sure it was so high that year, but maybe there was an extra financial payment or something. I'm not quite sure.
How far are we going back? 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
I think that's the year BT got the rights and they paid a shed load of money. Now, what UEFA have done is they've taken some of the domestic money, which would have been shed out.
Yeah, this is purely domestic. So
yes,
sorry,
domestic. I'll take it back.
It's a multi-year deal. It's normally quite constant, but normally it's in the higher 150 million range. So again, as we saw in Norwich last season, they got 100 million for being relegated. So, but that 50 million again makes the difference, doesn't it? It's about 3 million a place that you get. So finishing first, it brings you that. And of course, the big number, and it was almost exactly 50% of our total revenue stream was commercial income.
Yeah.
So we talked about where that's come from. That for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years has been over 200 million.
Yeah.
2021, we said 2021 wasn't a normal year. Probably it was for commercial income, 271 million. So we've gone up just over 10%. But there's barely a day go by, isn't there, where there's not barely a day where there's never an announcement on the city website. We've signed a partnership with X, we've signed a partnership with Y. And of course, the better we get, the more exposure we get, the more money we can demand from this partnership. Erling Haaland will bring in. I think have this conversation. Haaland will bring in a load of money.
Yeah, this talk of I read somewhere that City's sold about 1 million shirts last season, and with Haaland they sold, was it double that in 4 months?
So you could see commercial income being 325, 330 million next year.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to do a separate video specifically about commercial income. So, guys, keep a lookout for that one. That will be out in a few days' time. So, let's keep going through some of the numbers.
Those are the numbers, and eventually there's another small operating income source, which I think is to do with international players. That was about 6 million. So our total revenue for the 2022 financial year was 619 million pounds. And if you look back to 2011, it was a quarter of that.
Yeah.
So that shows the amount of growth that we've experienced in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. I don't think you can look at that just in isolation of what's happened generally, because most clubs have gone up a certain amount. That, whether you call that organic growth, in terms of what UEFA pay out, what the Premier League pay out. So everybody's been increasing, but also we've been, like you said earlier, we've been getting to the far end of competition. We're getting very deep in the Champions League. I think you mentioned once before, we were winners, semi-finalists in the last couple of seasons. We're getting to the end of the cups. We obviously we won quite a bit in that formidable season, and the 100-point season, the Centurion season. So we're getting to generally to the latter stages of all competitions.
Yep. Yeah.
I'll ask you.
Just one last thing on commercial. Oh no, actually, we'll talk about it in another video.
I was going to ask you this anyway, but I guess there's not much more upside on domestic income from TV and where we finish in the league, because we're finishing top. You can't get much more than finishing first. And in the Champions League, there's only little bits more income we can get, and that's by winning the thing and winning more group games. Because I just mentioned this, you look at, I did joke the other day when Riyad Mahrez missed that penalty. That cost us 1.8 million euros, because you get almost 3 million euros for winning a game. And if you draw, you get 900,000 euros. It's a huge difference. And those two games where we were quite happy to get 0-0 draws, cost City somewhere in the region of, it was over £3 million. Now, that's enough for us to pay the wages of a few academy players. So, every little bit helps.
It's the Champions League is a very complex allocation process. But the other thing that helps us, interesting seeing the draw the other day, Liverpool getting Real Madrid, the fewer English teams, the quicker the other English teams go out of the competition, again, the better for us, because part of the allocation is based on the relative number of games you play compared to your fellow English teams.
Yeah.
So the quicker they go out, the better it is financially, bizarrely. For us,
I recall, for some odd reason, they include the Scottish teams as well. But obviously, we're going to get a bit less money this year because Rangers and Celtic. And it's a weird thing. Yeah. Normally, there's just one. But hey, they've been, Rangers were got the worst Champions League record ever before they got booted out. That might affect a little bit.
Liverpool and Chelsea, for example, were to go out at this stage. That would be great news for us financially, bizarrely.
And you've mentioned finishing firsts gives you a bigger slice of the pie, because the team that finishes first in the league, when they start with the Champions League, when they get 40%, then it goes to 30, 20, and 10. So we're on that 40%. As I mentioned, there's not many more upsides with UEFA money and the Premier League money.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the biggest upside is we win it, and all the other three English teams go out at the group stage.
Yeah,
we'd probably pull in about 125 million, something like that, I reckon. Yeah. But you say, not that much upside. So the biggest upside is commercial income without extending the stadium, of course.
Let's talk about wages. I mean, people always talk about City's wages. I thought I would just mention that and what's happened to the City's wages.
Well, wages have been pretty static for the last couple of years, to be honest. So 2020, it was 351 million. 2021, 355 million. And in fact, this year, it's gone down slightly, 354 million, 353.9 million.
Yeah.
So wages have been pretty static. And again, we've talked about this before, haven't we? It's not about the players you sign. It's about the players you let go. They're numbers off the wage bill. If you sign one big player on a 300k a week, 15 million a year, you let 5 players go or on 3 million a year each.
Yeah,
that balances out from a wage point of view. Anyway,
I think in our last video,
wages have not shut up. It'd be interesting to see next year with Erling Haaland's £1 million a week. No, is it £1 million a day or whatever he's on?
I don't know what it is.
£1 million a week or something.
I think obviously we're going to have to wait till next year to find out a bit more about his wages to get a more.
But you think of it? Yeah, we'll talk a bit later. Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, other players have left us, and that will have a positive impact on the wage bill, of course. So
yeah, absolutely. But it is, you have to wait till the following year to find out, what all these journalists are saying, to see if there's any truth in Erling Haaland's on £1 million a week. His dad and his agent got 50 million between them. We'll get a better idea next year. If
you may get an idea, but it depends what's gone off the books, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There may be an increase, but wages have been pretty static for the last 3 years, which is and wages this year were they've been under 60% of turnover really for the last time they were over 60% was 2013.
Yeah,
UEFA suggests 70% as a top level, but since 2014 they've been less than 60%. So it's about 57%.
Are there any more important numbers to discuss before we move on to how the changing scenery with the FFP is going to impact City and how it impacts these numbers?
There's a couple of things, really. Well, a couple of things. One is, obviously, it was a normal year. So we were paying all the money to stewards and to whoever we pay to put on a game. And our other operating income was 133 million compared to 100 million last year. So
that's expensive, sorry, operating expense. Yeah,
it's costing us about £1 million a game, a home game, to in a full season, which is, you don't often get that sort of insight. So it costs us about £1 million to put on a game in operating costs.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about, the floodlights and the light show we had and all the people you've got to pay and police and whatever. So it's about £1 million a game. So it's rare you get that sort of insight. It may not be, because actually we may not have been paying a lot of people.
To be honest, I think we were paying them. I know
it's probably a fair bet. It's £1 million a game.
I think in that season where we had the COVID and we had we finished the season without fans, they were still paying the stewards. I think they still paid them for the rest of the season. It'll be the other expenses
yes. Again, that was pretty similar costs. So So that's probably our standard cost. We'll see. Obviously, cost of living going up. We'll see what happens. So those are the main figures. The other interesting one is player amortization, and as we've said before, that's the amount we kind of charge to the profit and loss account for the transfer fees we paid. So we talked about, we buy a £50 million player, we charge 10 million a year to the profit and loss account. So amortization this in 2022 was 140.7 million, which is a hell of a lot of money. But we've got the most expensive squad. But actually, that's lower than the previous 2 years when it was 146 million. So in actual fact, when you take wages and amortization together, that's gone down since the previous year, 2021. And I think we'll talk about the new. We're going to talk about the new FFP. I can't think there's anything. Obviously, we made 67.7 million player trading, which we talked about. I think we're going to dwarf that in 2023, to be honest. Nothing else particularly in the figures. All looking good. So when we talk about wages and amortization, the new FFP, if you want to talk about it now?
Yeah, well, let's do it.
Because I've done the comparison. As of next year, when they change the format of the Champions League, we're going to be playing in this kind of mini league of 10 teams or 11 teams. They're also changing the way they do financial fair play. At the moment, it's a bit of a stupid system. We have this discussion before. We both worked in the accountancy field. How can you judge the financial sustainability of a club on what it did 3 years ago or 2 years ago? You want to be looking at forward. So the old FFP, which took 3 years' profits or losses, allowed you to add something back, and then you had to be in profit over that 3 year period. Was a bit of a bad system. So they've changed it, and it is quite specific now. So what they're looking at is player costs, purely player costs. Really is the key. So the new formula, I'm simplifying this a bit. There's other things that can go into it. You take your revenue, and in our case, that's 600. It says 613 million, but we had a £6 million additional operating income. So let's take the full figure, 619 million. Although they might take the football figure, 613 million. I don't know. You then add on profits on sale, which was, as we said, 67.7 million. And then you take your wages and amortization. And when we show a wages figure in the account, it's for all staff, players, plus admin staff. Although we pay the senior execs through CFG, because that's the level we work at. So Ferran Soriano, Omar Barada, Chiki Bagheristan, all those, Raul de Vries, they'll all be paid by CFG. But obviously we pay administrative staff, and I think we've got about 850 of those. So but you then have to honour the coaching staff as well, the senior coaching staff. But we'll just take the wage figure that's in the account. So just to recap, it's revenue plus profit on player sales. That's the bottom line. And the top line is wages plus amortization. Now, the formula is ultimately that has to be less than 70%.
Yeah.
So your wages and amortization have to be lower than 70% or lower than your revenue plus profit on sale, which is why I think clubs are going to be much more active in selling players who they don't think are going to sign contracts. So it doesn't kick in immediately. So for next year, it's 90%. The following year, 80%. And then finally, in 3 years' time, 425, it will be 70%. So if you take our headline figures, wages plus amortization, 420, wages plus amortization of 495 million. If you take off profit on sale, and that doesn't matter which way you do it, 427 million, divide that by our revenue, and that's 69%. So we've
already met the one that's going to be in 3 years' time.
Of course, when Haaland's £10 million a day wage gets added on, of course, another matter, won't it? So yeah, it's looking great from a. We talk about sustainability. We're sustainable. It's again, you can see whether the owner has put in any money and not a penny has gone in this year.
Yeah. So City is, and we've talked about this before. It's great to see City are a sustainable club. If the owner steps away, we just carry on. It's a common fallacy from other fans of other clubs, and even some renowned journalists that the owners are putting money in, that we've got no ceiling to what we can spend. We have to, like all other clubs, abide by FFP. And as I said, it's great that we know that if the owner walked away, the club would just carry on because it's a profitable, sustainable business.
So the only other thing to say is obviously our bottom line profit was 41.7 million. When you take off the player sale profit, our underlying loss was 25 million, which is pretty well in line with what we've done the last few years. So in fact, it's a bit lower. So 2017, it was 34.5 million underlying loss. Dipped under 30. So, that's going down as well. It's not hugely, but
basically everything's going in the right direction. I think the last thing I'm going to ask you,
I didn't have the chance to. One of the most revealing of the financial statements is, as you will probably know, is a cash flow statement, and that takes out all the non-cash stuff. So how much cash is actually flowing into the business, and how much have we generated, and then how much have we actually paid out, which can be very different to the profit and loss account, as you know.
Yeah.
I haven't done it this year. I haven't had the chance to do it this year, but I would guess that we're looking at potentially something around 150 million cash.
Yeah.
That we've got sitting there after we've paid our cash expenses like wages and stuff like that. So, we've got this pot of cash to invest. And we have done.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, going forwards, we mentioned that there's not much more upside to what UEFA give us. Obviously, that might go up once they expand it to 10 games in the group stages. There's not much upside to the Premier League because, hey, if you're winning it and you're showing almost more than anybody else, there's not much upside unless the next TV deal goes up.
But everyone involved gets the same
benefit. Obviously, you got to grow your income, and I think the ways to grow the income from the sponsorship side, from the stadium, the fans are paying a bit more, and other sources like, for argument's sake, the Etihad. Was it called the Etihad Arena? The new
Pop Live Arena. Yeah.
Have 20,000 seats.
Able to report some of that income or profit.
Yes. So that's how we go forwards. That's how we keep on increasing our income, maintaining our place in the Champions League and at the top of the Premier League, and then increasing our income in other ways to keep Keep up with all the other clubs that, you've got Chelsea spending money, Newcastle potentially spending a lot of money. We'll do a video at some point about Liverpool potentially having some new wealthier owners and some of the restrictions of FFP, because you can't just say, hey, I've got £100 billion. You can't just pump it into the club. I think every year I've done these reviews with you, the numbers keep getting better and better. We talk about the sustainability, the security of the club going forwards is getting better and better. And it's a far cry from if you go back even just 15 or 16 years to when the club was just about, to go into administration, and we were struggling. And it just shows what good ownership and business practices can do to an organization, a company, in a short space of time.
Exactly, yeah. Just one. Sorry, there is one last thing from the account. We talk about it, but there's always some interesting stuff in the notes to the account. Yes. We put some meat on the bones. And note 25 is events after the reporting date. So mainly that's any significant events that have happened after June the 30th. Obviously, sale and purchase of players is one of those. And the club note that since the year end, the club has entered into agreements to acquire the registrations of Erling Haaland, of course, Calvin Phillips, Manuel Akanji, Sergio Gomez, and Stefan Ortega. Didn't he have a great game last night? Fantastic. But also on the other side, we sold Sterling, we sold Gabriel Jesus, we sold Alex Zinchenko, Romeo Lavia, Samuel Edozie, Juan Larios, Darko Giabi, Ko Itakura, Ari Moric, Ante Palaversa, a load of players we sold. And the note says the net income on these transactions was approximately 35 million. Now that's the book cost. So if you think we paid let's say 150 million for the players that came in, basically we received 185 million.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. There's one other thing that has come out this week. It's not in the accounts, and we don't really talk about this. Is the trial of Benjamin Mendy, and it's come out that Manchester City haven't been paying him since I think September last year. So,
which is probably why our wage bill went down a little bit. I suspect.
Yeah, I would have expected him to be on at least 100,000 a week. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, actually, in the accounts that City mentioned is
Premier League inquiry.
The Premier League. I've lost it. I don't know where it is. The Premier League inquiry, and
but it is just a one line.
23. The club acknowledged an ongoing Premier League investigation linked to the speculation resulting from the illegal hacking and out of context publication of emails. So this is the first indication that it's very much based on the Spiegel stuff, which has already been comprehensively thrown out of court at CAS.
A lot of that stuff's been debunked.
Unless the Premier League has found the smoking gun. And if they have, it's taken them 4 or 5 years to find it. But one thing the club should say in the accounts, if they feel there's a chance of a negative impact, then they should say so.
Yeah.
The club have not said that. Therefore, the implication is the club don't feel there's anything to worry about.
If I remember correctly, if the probability is high, then they've got to make a contingency in the account for it. If the probability is low, then they've got to mention it. If the probability is negligible, they don't talk about it at all.
One of the concerns was that there was something else that would come up. But clearly, it's all based on that. So, not too worried.
Not worried about it. Colin, to be. Yeah, I've got to say it's fantastic to get your insight on the accounts and go into a lot more depth than I think has generally been put out there, and fans can go watch this video and listen to all the great comments you've made explaining what's been going on with City's accounts. And as I said, we will be doing other videos in this series talking about sponsorship. We'll talk about Pep's new contract. We'll talk about the academy and how valuable it is to City. And we'll talk about the potential increase in the stadium, the north side to maybe 60,000. But for the time being, thanks so much for your contribution, Colin.
Yeah, pleasure, Ray.